Yes, hello everyone. I am Quinte Wise. I am from Texas Southern University. I am a financial aid specialist, and I am super excited to share all the knowledge that I have learned through this whole process, not only as on the staff, but also as a student. So I look forward to providing some great information along with the amazing Ms. Castillo during this presentation.
Hi, I'm Crystal Garcia. I'm the Regional Recruitment Counselor for South, and I'm here as a moderator. So if y'all have any questions in the chat, I'll be assisting with that.
Hey all, this is Jay McAleese with Mississippi State University. I am also a moderator. So ask your questions in the Q&A.
So we have one question in the chat. It says, can y'all all please put your names and emails in the chat? So we'll go ahead and do that.
So I'll reintroduce myself now that we have more people here. Welcome to the HARN Summer Search Series. I'm Shana, Castillo, Assistant Director of Admission for Rice University, and I do cover the Houston area with my colleague Nelson Mendoza.
Hello, everyone. I am Quinte Wise. I'm a financial aid specialist at Texas Southern University, and I am honored to actually be present to share some great, valuable information about the financial aid process along with Ms. Castillo.
Hello, everyone. I'm Crystal Garcia. I'm the Regional Recruitment Counselor for the University of South Alabama, and I'll be one of your moderators today.
Hey all, my name is Jay McAleese. I'm with Mississippi State University, and I will also be a moderator for this event.
So I see we already have some questions in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and let Shana and Quinte do the first slide. And after every slide, we're going to go ahead and answer some questions live.
All right, great. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. All right, so what is financial aid? I know a lot of questions have already started about what financial aid is, how can it be used to assist with tuition and fees. So financial aid is a form of funding that is usually either granted or loaned to students for the purpose of attending a post-secondary educational institution, and it can come from many different sources, including government, school, and private organizations. All right, so how do you apply for financial aid? How is it determined? Every student has to complete a free application for federal student aid. It's a FAFSA application. It's free. You do not have to pay for it. It's available October the 1st of every year. Okay, you can complete the application at www.fasfa.edu.gov. All you will need your FSA ID. You and your parent will need the FSA ID. That's what you would need to you would need to log into the application, complete every tab, and also sign your application. You will also need your 2019 federal tax return. So if your parents or yourself filed in 2019, you can actually input that information in manually, or you can use the data retrieval tool, which will automatically pull that information from the IRS and it'll put it into your application, okay? And you will also, once you have completed every single tab, at the end, there will be a signature. That's one of the most important parts. Once you've completed everything, you've answered all the questions, just make sure at the end that both signatures, the student signature and your parent signature is applied. Then you will also be able to review your student aid report, which will give you a summary of what you can expect to receive in financial aid. Okay, now everything is a lot of technology. Everything is at the tip of your fingers on your smartphones. Now you can also, not only can you apply from a PC, your computer, your laptop, you can also do it from your phone. All you have to do is download the My Student Aid app, and you can actually complete your FAFSA from your phone. So it's a lot more convenient, just think if you can't get access to an actual laptop. Okay, so let's just say you're not eligible to complete the FAFSA application. Now there are some students that are permanent residents, but they're not U.S. citizens, and a lot of them, I know the funding is limited for those. But those students can actually complete a TASFA application. It's basically similar to a FAFSA, but it's just for those students that are not U.S. citizens. TASFA stands for Texas Application for State Financial Aid. It's meant for students who are ineligible for federal aid through FAFSA who are Texas residents and went to a high school for at least 3 years in the state. These include, but are not limited to, foreign nationals, legal permanent residents, and eligible non-citizens. You can only apply for either FAFSA or TASFA. You cannot apply for one. That's very important. Now, to be eligible for it, because as a TASFA student, the only aid you can really get is actually the Texas grant, okay? So to be eligible for the Texas grant, you must be classified by the institution as a Texas resident. You must also be registered with Selective Service or be exempt. Now, if you are a female, you are exempt. But if you are a male, at least 18 years old, you have to register with Selective Service. You have to have financial need as determined by the institution, and you must be enrolled at least 3/4 time, which is at least 9 credit hours. You have to not have earned a bachelor's degree, and you have not, you not have been convicted of a felony or crime involving a controlled substance.
So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the CSS profile. So not all colleges use the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA, but most or some private colleges, such as Rice University, we do use the CSS profile for all students applying for need-based aid as well as institutional aid. And at Rice, the CSS profile does replace the TASFA for undocumented students at our campus. So if you are undocumented, check with the schools if they require the CSS profile in addition to any other forms as well. And I will definitely give links to everything that we talk about in this presentation towards the end.
All right, so now back to the FAFSA application. Now, there's going to be a section in there where you have to enter your parents' information, okay? So for dependent students, you will have to enter your parents' information. If you are an independent student, you will not. So how does that apply to you? If any of these criteria that I'm about to mention to you applies to you, you are considered an independent student and you will not be required to enter your parents' information, okay? So if you are 24 years of age or older by December the 1st of the award year, if you're married, if you are or will be enrolled in a master's or doctoral program beyond a bachelor's degree during the school year, you have children who receive more than half their support from you, you have dependents other than your children or spouse who live with you and who receive more than half their support from you and will continue to receive more than half their support from you through June 30th of the school year. You are an orphan or ward of the court, you are a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, or you are currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purpose other than training. Now, if any of that applies to you, you're considered an independent student, so you will not be required to enter your parents' information on the application. But if this does not apply for you, you will have to enter your parents' information. That's a very important step on the application. So if you did work and you filed your own taxes, that doesn't make you an independent student. You still are relying on your parents. So it's very important that you put your parents' information on the application and have them to complete every section that's required for the parent. So that's very important to remember. Okay, so let's just say once you have completed every step, you've completed your FAFSA application, there is an Inceptia verification gateway. Now, this is a random process by the Department of Education. If you are selected for verification, do not panic. There's just some additional steps and requirements that you have to complete before you can be awarded. Okay, so if you are selected for verification, you will receive an email from Inceptia letting you know what the next steps are. There will be a link, which is the link that you're seeing there. You and your parent both will have to follow the instructions in that link, create an account, and there will be a task list that you have to complete. Once that task list has been completed, you and your parent both will be able to e-sign it. Once you have been verified, that information will then be sent over to the school of your choice, and then that school will be able to award you financial aid. Okay, once you've been verified, please allow up to 5 to 7 business days for all your information to be reviewed and processed. But keep in mind, if you are selected for verification, you cannot be awarded until that step is complete. So just always remember that. Okay, so once you have completed all the steps, you submitted your FAFSA application, you've completed verification, that's if you've been selected. Now we can move on to what types of financial aid you're eligible to receive. We have gift aid, which now that's the money everyone wants. That's the free money that the student does not have to pay back. Okay, you have the federal Pell Grant. You have the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, the Texas Public Education Grant, the Texas Grant, the Teach Grant, and the Institutional Grant. Now, the federal Pell Grant, which we're going to get into a little later in the presentation, what determines your eligibility is your EFC, which is your expected family contribution. That's going to determine your eligibility for federal grants. Now, the state grants, which is the Texas Public Education Grant and the Texas Grant, that's first come, first serve. So that's why it's very important that you remember that date that we mentioned at the beginning, October the 1st. That is when the application is available. That's the earliest that you can actually apply for financial aid. So like I said, the state grant funding is first come, first serve. So that's why it's very important to go ahead and submit your application and complete all your requirements that you have to complete ahead of time. So you can, if you are eligible, you can qualify for those grants, that grant funding. You can also check with your institution, because a lot of times there's available grants that your institution offers that you could be eligible to receive. Okay, so let's also say we have work study. Let's say you want to work on campus while you're also pursuing your education. Federal work study provides part-time jobs for undergraduate and graduate students with financial need, allowing them to earn money to help pay education expenses. The program requires community service work and work related to the student's course of study. Okay, here's a quick overview of it, of how it actually works. It provides part-time employment while you are enrolled in school. So it'll basically be around your schedule. You will make your own schedule. Usually you can only work up to a certain amount of hours per week, and it will be around your schedule. So when I say schedule, your class schedule. So you'll be actually making your own schedule. It's available to undergraduate, graduate, and professional students with financial need. It's available to full-time or part-time students, and it's administered by schools participating in the federal work study program. So if you're interested, there is a question on the FAFSA application that asks if you're interested in work study. Just make sure that you indicate yes, and then you can just follow up with the school of your choice to get more information about if it's offered and to see if you're actually eligible to receive it. Okay, there's also student loans. Now this is for a lot of students the last option. A lot of students don't really want to use the loans. They don't want to rack up the debt, but sometimes you do have to use the student loans. Now that is the option for all students. Now it's considered self-help financial aid, which includes federal and private loans, which must be repaid with interest. Okay, so what is interest? Interest is money that's paid regularly at a particular rate for the use of the money borrowed. So that's going to be, the interest is what's going to be added on top of what you're actually borrowing in the loan. There's different types of loans that you can actually be eligible to receive. You have the subsidized loan, which the government pays the interest while you are enrolled in at least 6 hours or more. The unsubsidized, now the student is responsible for the interest. You also have to be enrolled in at least 6 hours or more, but you will be responsible for the interest of the loan. That's one of the big differences between, other than the amount that you'll be receiving. The other big difference is just the government pays the interest on the subsidized loan, but not on the unsubsidized loan. So for some students, they'd rather take out the subsidized loan instead of the unsubsidized if they don't have to use both, okay? You also have the Parent Plus loan. Now, this is just an option. If your loan, your grants is not enough to help you assist you with your tuition and fees, the parent can apply for the Parent Plus loan. Now, it is credit-based. If it is approved, that amount that's approved can be used to assist the student with the tuition and fees. There's also private and alternative loans. Now, this is also credit-based for Texas residents, and you can go through www.hhloans.gov to get additional information as far as what the requirements are and what they're actually looking for. So that's just if you need some additional funding outside of the loans and the grants that are being offered through the federal aid that you're receiving, that you're receiving through the FAFSA.
All right, so now it's my turn. We're going to be talking about applying to outside scholarships. So there are many other scholarships that you can apply for to cover any financial gaps to the cost of attendance. And there are different types of scholarships out there. There's community scholarships, church scholarships, private organization or donor scholarships, so much out there. So please do your research. Before you fill out the application and put your personal information like your social security number and things like that, you shouldn't need a social security number to fill out a scholarship application. You don't even need a bank account. So if you see that on there, be very wary. If you're not too sure if a scholarship that you want to apply to is a scam or not, because yes, there's a lot of scams out there, so be careful. Ask your college counselor to help investigate for you. And a lot of times they know of many scholarships that they may know, hey, this is a reputable scholarship, you should apply for this one. And so do your research on scholarships before filling out any personal information. You don't want to be a victim of identity theft. And also be aware of emails and mail that you may get saying, hey, you won a scholarship. And you're like, I've not applied for it because I didn't even know about it. So definitely if you get those in your mail, because they will mail all kinds of stuff to you and you'll get all kinds of emails. So make sure you don't fall for those as well. And do your due diligence, do your research, be very careful about the scholarships you do apply to, and get help with your counselor if needed. And on here, you see the icons to some of these scholarship websites, and these are ones that I've shared with my students in the past. So you've got College Greenlight, you've got Career One Stop through the U.S. Department of Labor, you've got fastweb.com. Also, College Board's Big Feature has a scholarship search feature on their website, and then the JLV College Counseling Scholarship List. So next, we will cover merit scholarships. So merit aid or scholarships, they can come in many forms. So when it comes to paying for college, merit aid is one of the ways to close the gap between the cost of attendance and need-based financial aid. And this type of financial aid is not awarded based on need, but on academics, athletics, artistic works, or even special interests. And some colleges offer merit aid to reduce the cost. So that's always a plus. We always want to reduce our costs. There are community organizations that offer merit scholarships. And you need to, when you win or get awarded a merit scholarship or aid, you want to see, is it a one-time scholarship or is this a renewable scholarship? And if it is renewable, a lot of the times it is based on maintaining a certain GPA. So read the fine print when you are applying for these scholarships. And then, of course, some scholarships do require separate applications. And so they have separate applications. They may have separate deadlines. So check with the individual colleges that offer them, as well as those opportunities in your community, because all of these requirements may be different. So now next, we're going to talk about how your financial aid is determined. So every college and university should have what's called the full cost of attendance somewhere on their website. And if you can't find it on there, a lot of times there's a search box and you can type in the word cost of attendance and find it there. So you want to make sure you have all parts of the cost of attendance, and they include tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, travel expenses, as well as miscellaneous or personal expenses. And so you may have to do some digging to get all of these different costs. I visited a few websites where I only see under cost of attendance, tuition fees, room and board, and the other costs are not added on there. So if you want to get a true idea of what it's going to cost, you do need to have all parts of the cost of attendance. And as I said earlier, if you're having trouble finding the cost of attendance, you can do a search through the university search box or even through College Board's Big Feature website. So when you're on the Big Feature website and you look up a college, there will be a menu saying paying, and there is where you should get a breakdown of the cost of attendance. It may be 1 or 2 years old information, but it'll at least give you an estimate of what the costs are. So now, since we mentioned cost of attendance, and I did mention what they are, let's talk about direct costs and indirect costs. And so in the cost of attendance, this is how it's broken down. Direct costs are tuition and fees, room and board, and that means those are things that you're going to be billed by the university, and you have to pay the university directly. The indirect costs are books and supplies, travel expenses, or even miscellaneous expenses, and that's kind of a la carte. So for indirect costs, they give you an estimate of what they're budgeting for you. And so for books and supplies, you may buy brand new books. Maybe you're going to rent books. Maybe you're going to borrow books. So you could spend as much or as little as you want on books and supplies, and it's really up to you. So even though they give you a budget, you have to manage that. Then the travel expenses. For those of you who have to go to college and leave home, you may have to take a plane, a train, or even drive your own automobile there. And so you have to think about what it costs to get you there and back, and especially for holidays if you plan to come home for holidays. And then your miscellaneous expenses could be what you need to buy laundry detergent, or go out for a pizza with your friends, or buy some socks, things like that. And even though a university, let's say for example, they give you a budget of $2,000 for the year, fall and spring, if they budget you $2,000 for miscellaneous expenses, that doesn't mean you have to spend $2,000 on miscellaneous expenses. This is an an area where you can actually cut down on some of your expenses to make college a lot more affordable. So next, we're going to talk about the expected family contribution. We heard this earlier, and basically what this number is, this EFC, as we call it, is calculated by the FAFSA, or the TAFSA, if you're doing the TAFSA. And it is calculated using the federal methodology, and the amount is what they suggest that your family can reasonably be expected to contribute to your education. So the EFC does not change from college to college. So if you apply to a college that costs, the full cost of attendance is $60,000 and your EFC is $10,000, then you subtract that, that means your unmet need is $50,000. But if you apply to a more affordable school, that's $20,000 and your ESC is still $10,000, it doesn't change from school to school, then your unmet need is only $10,000. So that is not going to change. Your ESC stays the same regardless of the schools you apply to. And then there are two main components taken into consideration when the FAFSA is calculating your ESC. And the first one is your parent contribution as well as the student contribution. So now next, we are talking about the net price calculator. And what is the net price calculator and what does it mean? What does it do? So for the purpose of talking about net price calculators, they basically estimate the total cost of 1 year of college for a first-time, full-time undergraduate student. And it does take into consideration, like if you receive any grants. So if it says this is what it's going to cost, we're going to calculate what you're eligible for in grant aid and subtract that. And that's going to give you a net price. And that's what we want you to focus on. Don't focus on the sticker price. That's the full cost of attendance. The net price is what this net price calculator is going to work behind the scenes, this calculator. And I know at Rice, we have our net price calculator link on our financial aid website. And when students fill that out for Rice, and it is specific to Rice, it does take into consideration all the numbers that you put on there. And we'll take into consideration even financial aid that we offer at the institutional level, like the Rice investment. And so at the end, it'll give you this estimate. So the quality of the numbers that you enter in the net price calculator will determine how much quality the estimate is that you get at the end. And so the net price could look a lot better than what the full cost of attendance is, depending on the school's net price calculator and what it calculates. So now next, here's College for All Texans. This is a resource that was created for students who are staying in Texas to go to college. They have all kinds of resources that provide information about applying to college, applying for financial aid, and it is designed specifically for Texas students. Also, the TAFSA application can be found on this website as well. And so it's a fillable PDF form. And so even though the FAFSA is filled out online at fafsa.ed.gov, this TAFSA form can be found on the College for All Texans website. And so when you go to this website here, in their search box, you can type in TAFSA and it'll take you to the page that has the TAFSA. And of course, it gives lots of great information about military options and other resources as well. So we're here towards the end, and I just want to thank everybody for attending this session, and we are coming to the Q&A section here that our moderators are going to help us with. But if you have any questions, email us. We put our emails on here. Also, the studentaid.gov website is here, as well as their 800 number. And also, don't forget to sign up for the next HARN presentation, Polishing Your Application. And I did put that link on there as well.
Well, awesome, y'all. I know that we can't hear y'all, but I hope that everybody gives our presenters a big round of applause. This was a lot of really great information. And so at this time, If we haven't answered your question, it's because we're going to hold on to it now. And I am going to ask the first four, and then Crystal is going to ask the remainder. And then if there's any more at the end, and if we have more time, we'll just continue in this loop. So I'm going to start at the top. Evelyn Sanchez, you asked, is the process the same with TASFA as it is with FAFSA? So if any of y'all can answer this.
Sure. So I'll tackle this one. Is the process the same with TASFA as it is with FAFSA? Yes, the process is pretty similar. Of course, with the FAFSA, it's online. You go through the website and you complete it. The TASFA is a paper form. So everything that you're submitting is just filled out on a paper, and it's going to be submitted to the financial aid office if your school is actually it does TASFA. Also, just check with your school, because I don't believe every school does TASFA. Just make sure that your school that you're interested in actually does TASFA. But it's going to be basically reviewed through the office. Usually, it takes depending on when it's actually been accepted. It usually takes up to 10 to 14 business days for it to be reviewed. So that process is a little different. Like, I guess you can say it's a little different because the FAFSA application, everything is being reviewed online, but the TASFA, everything is just basically being reviewed by the financial aid office. So in a way, it is a little different. So yes, to answer that question, yes.
Okay. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. The question is, what forms should we use if we don't qualify for FAFSA? Do we have to fill up CSS profile, coalition? So if any of y'all want to answer this one.
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer this one. So if you don't qualify for the FAFSA and you are applying to a college in Texas, as Quinte mentioned, you can use the TASFA application. But also make sure you visit the financial aid website, because if you're applying to a private university, for example, like Rice University, we don't accept the TASFA, we do accept the CSS profile. And so you really need to become not only familiar with the admission process, but the financial aid process for the colleges you're applying to. And you don't just do one TASFA. You can do the PDF online and print it out and send it to all the colleges you're applying to, because you do have to send it to each individual school you're applying to.
Awesome, thank you for that. The next question we have on the board is from Paulina. She asks, can you apply to the CSS and FAFSA? I believe you just answered that, but if you have any extra input here.
Yeah, so Rice University, we do federal and state aid, so that would come from the FAFSA information. And because we're a private institution and we have private donors that donate money for scholarships, we use the CSS profile so that we can qualify more students for our institutional scholarships. So we do accept both, and some universities may as well.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, we have another great question from Evelyn here. How do work-study jobs work with undocumented students? Can they apply?
Great question. Yes, for undocumented students, you would be eligible to complete the TASFA application. There's a question on there that asks, are you interested in work study? And you would just, of course, have to check it if the funding is available, because once again, that's a first come, first serve. So if the funding is available, you will be eligible to receive to work study as the undocumented student.
All right. So our next question is from anonymous attendee. So NPC. How can someone who's not a citizen find their NPC? It asks whether citizen international or DACA or not permanent student.
So I'm thinking they may mean the EFC. And so the TASFA would determine the EFC. And so they would have to actually contact the financial aid office that they are sending their TASFA to, because they're having to do it manually. It is a manual paper application, so they're having to manually calculate the EFC, either using the federal methodology or the institutional methodology formula. And so you're not going to get an EFC by filling out a TASFA. So you would have to call the financial aid office, at least to one of the schools you're applying to get that information.
Thank you so much, Shauna. The next question is, can you apply for both FAFSA and Texas grants?
Great question. Yes, the FAFSA, once you actually complete your FAFSA, that's actually determining your eligibility to receive the Texas grant, and also other funding, other grants that's being offered as well. So yes.
Great, thank you so much. So the next question is from Andrew, and he asked, when should I apply to the FAFSA?
So the FAFSA and the CSS profile become available October 1st of every year. And every university is going to have a different deadline. So just like you have to know the application deadlines for the universities that you're applying to, you also need to check when their financial aid deadlines or priority deadlines are, because it will differ from university to university.
Okay, so we have another question from an anonymous attendee. It looks like this is a good scenario question here. It's kind of long, so bear with me. Hi, if someone's parents make an income that doesn't qualify them for financial aid or scholarships, or the family has assists that doesn't qualify them for aid. However, let's say the parents are not willing to spend that money on that child, what options do they have as far as college scholarships? So I guess what they're asking is if a student doesn't qualify for federal aid or state aid, and the student or the student's parents aren't able to cover the cost, what scholarship options would be available? I know this would be specific to each university, but if y'all have insights, I think this anonymous attendee would be grateful.
Yes. Okay. So you may be depending on how much your parent is actually making, you won't be eligible for the grant funding, but you will be eligible to receive loans. So if that's an option that you're actually interested in taking, you will receive loans and you will be awarded that, and you can actually, determine what the amount that you actually want to use. So you will be eligible for some type of financial aid. It may not be the grants that you're looking for or that you're expecting, but you will qualify for something. And as far as scholarships, you can also qualify for a scholarship. If you're meeting certain criteria, like at Texas Southern University, if you're meeting a certain GPA criteria, SAT, ACT, you can qualify for a scholarship, even if your parents make a lot of money, okay? So you still can be eligible to receive a scholarship and also student loans, even if you're not eligible to receive the grant funding through through FAFSA.
Also to take into consideration, so let's say you do the FAFSA, you see your EFC is $8,000, and that's the part that your family could possibly be expected to contribute. And your parents are saying, no, we're not going to give you anything. So then you know that $8,000 you need to make up in scholarships. Don't just rely on scholarships at the universities. Look for your community scholarships. Look for scholarships at your church. Look for scholarships that are state or local or even at the national level. So if you know now that your parents aren't going to cough up any money to help you with college, you need to be voracious about applying for scholarships all year long. It needs to become your part-time job. But also there's different situations. And so we don't know the full story. There could be more to your story. There are situations where students may not be living at home, and so they don't have access for their parents' tax information, and they may be living with a friend or whatnot. And there are other ways to learn about resources. I would talk to your college counselor about your situation if there's any, and they may be able to let you know of different opportunities like the McKinney-Vento Act if you happen to be like an unaccompanied youth living on your own away from your parents and could qualify for other types of money. So talk to your college counselor, but also don't be afraid to call the university's financial aid office and explain your situation, give a little bit more details, and they will be able to do a little bit more for you to help answer your question. Because I know this was just kind of like a general question. There could be more to the story.
Great answers. Okay, so we have a question here. It asks, for the 2021-2022 school year, what year of taxes will the class of 2022 graduating seniors need?
Yes, you will. It's always 2 years prior, so you will have to submit the 2019 taxes. So if your parents worked in 2019 and they filed taxes, it's going to request that information. That information can be manually inputted into your application, or you can use a data retrieval tool, which will automatically pull that information from the IRS and input it into the FAFSA application. So it'll be 2019.
Okay, we have a question here from Shana. It says, what is Inceptia verification and why would someone get chosen for it?
Now, this is a random process. It's supposed to be random. I was one of those students that was selected every single year, so I didn't think it was so random, but it is a random process by the Department of Education. So if you are selected for verification, like I said, don't panic. It's just some additional steps that you have to complete to verify the information that you put on your FAFSA application. So it's just some additional steps that you have to go through before your financial aid office at your school can actually award you. So just always remember, it's a random process. They're not singling you out of the bunch. It's just a random process that a select few students have to go through.
Perfect. Okay, so we have a question here from Kendall. It asks, how does a student checking or savings account balance impact financial aid offers? If it is best if a student does not have a savings account?
So it kind of affects your ESC. And then your ESC kind of determines what your financial eligibility is. So it kind of affects that. But there are allowances for different assets and different things like that. And so if you have $10,000 in savings, yes, that's going to affect your EFC big time. But if you're like, I've got $1,000 in my savings account, it's not going to be as big of an effect in the calculation. And also checking account could always be, my checking account balance changes from day to day. And so I remember when I was filling out my FAFSA a long time ago, I made sure it was on the day, like we paid all the bills and everything. So then we didn't have very much to put that we had in our checking because you know me, I was just gonna be like, it's asking for a number, Mom. I need the exact number. My mom's like, well, I just paid all the bills. So this is what we have left. And I was like, okay, this is a good number. I didn't ask you for this number at the beginning of the month when you just got paid.
Thank you, Shana. So our next question is, can you apply if you graduate in 2022? And do you know if any grants that allows you to apply for high school graduates of the 2022 year? I can't find any ...
Great question. So yes, you can. If you're graduating in 2022, the application is available October the 1st of every year. So even though you're not graduating until 22, you can actually go ahead and apply on October the 1st of this year, 2021. You can actually, if you're not too sure what school you're actually interested in, or if you have a few that you're interested in, you can actually put all those schools on the application and they will receive it, okay? But even though you're not graduating until 2022, you can go ahead and submit your application starting October the 1st, and that will actually determine what types of financial aid, loans, grants that you're eligible to, that you're eligible for. So that's how you apply for grants. You can also check with the school that you're interested in just to see if there's any institutional grants that they may be offering that you can receive.
Thank you so much. So next one is a pretty similar question regarding the FAFSA. I know the FAFSA opens up on October 1st, but is it possible to fill out the application before that date?
So Technically, yes, you can. But let's say you graduate at the end of May in 2022 and you want to jump straight into college June of 2022, right after high school. Well, if you do the current application that is open now, you could qualify for financial aid for next summer because you're not going this fall and spring because you're still in high school. So technically you can still apply, but there are time frames for each application of when they're awarding the monies. So like from October 1st till, June 30th of the next year, the application is for fall of 2022 and spring of 2023. So they tell you which application phase to use for each semester that you're going to enroll in college.
Thank you so much. So our next question is from Victoria. Is the TASFA only for non-US citizens, or can we apply if we don't qualify for the FAFSA?
Yes, the TASFA is only for non-US citizens. If you are a citizen, of course, you would have to apply for the FAFSA, but if you're not a citizen, it only applies for TASFA. You can't do both.
Right, and the TASFA is for students who are going to universities in Texas, mostly public universities. So as I mentioned earlier, like if you are an undocumented student and you don't qualify for the FAFSA, then for us, you would do the CSS profile only.
Great answers. Thank you so much, guys. So next questions from anonymous attendee. Do universities automatically award students who have applied to their institution merit scholarships based on their GPA and test scores that the student sends them? Or will students need to directly apply for a merit scholarship at their desired university?
The answer is yes to both of those. It depends on the colleges.
Great question. And also keep a close eye out for those deadlines. Certain institutions, the application opens on a certain day and it closes. So make sure as you're in high school, you're keeping an eye out what those deadlines are so you can go ahead and start submitting those applications. Because I know for Texas Southern University, we do have a certain scholarships that we do award based off your GPA, SAT, and ACT. But we also are looking at those applications that are being submitted by the deadline as well. So just keep the eye out on those deadlines.
Yeah, and there's some colleges that don't allow students who haven't submitted an application access to the scholarship application. So I do know of a college that you need to submit the application, and then like a few days later, they'll send you an email saying, if you want to apply for our scholarships, click on this link. So you have to apply first to get access. So if you're applying on the day of the deadline and you're not going to get the link until the day after the deadline, so you have to ask these questions. When is your deadline to your scholarships, and how do I apply?
Thanks for those answers, y'all. Just to let everybody know, we have about 10 minutes left. So if you have pressing questions, please put them in the Q&A. If we don't get to them in this session, also take down both of their contact information, as they're going to be good resources for you to ask these questions if they're not answered here. But we're gonna do a couple more. So Morgan asks, you were talking about state and federal aid and mentioned that females are exempt from ? But males still need to apply for ? What did this pertain to? Thanks.
So I know Quinte mentioned about the selective service. So for TASFA, if you are a male, you're 18 years old already, when you fill out a TASFA, you do need to sign up for the selective service to be eligible for financial aid through the TASFA. If you are a female, selective service is only for males 18 years or older, so you're automatically exempt if you're female.
Thank you for that. We do have another question from anonymous attendee. This person's asking a lot of questions, but we encourage anonymous attendee to ask as many questions as he or she would like. They ask, I remember you mentioned those filing TASFA are eligible only for a few grants. Are they eligible for other private scholarships and grants offered by colleges? Net price calculator is not giving me correct picture of what I would be paying.
Great question. So for TASFA, funding is limited. It's only for Texas students that graduated from a Texas high school, and it's first come, first served. So the funding is limited. As far as the scholarships, that's also limited. I always encourage students to check with their department, because there are a lot of scholarships that are offered through the department that they can apply for, that's available for them. So yes, I'm not sure what the other part of the question was, but yes, there is a chance that you can receive a scholarship through your institution, but just make sure to ask about it, because certain institutions have scholarships that are meant for that population. So just make sure to ask.
Right, and don't be afraid to ask at college fairs or calling the financial aid offices of the schools you're interested in and asking them what financial aid is available for undocumented students and what do I need to fill out to qualify, because it could be different from each school. So Texas schools, public schools will use the TASFA, and like Quinte mentioned, those funds are limited and are on a first come, first served basis. But for institutional scholarships, every university is going to have something different. So for example, at Rice, we do meet 100% of unmet need, and we treat our undocumented students as domestic students. And so if you only receive a little bit of Texas aid and you're admitted to our school, then we're going to find the money to come up with the rest of the unmet need in the calculation from that formula we saw earlier, cost of attendance minus ESE equals unmet need. So check with each school.
Great, thanks y'all. So we have a question asking, I'm gonna ask two questions here. The first one is, can one reapply for the FAFSA? And then the second part of the question is it possible to pre-fill the FAFSA application before the opening date of October 1st? And I asked those two together because you had answered the second one already.
Yes. Okay. So can you reapply for FAFSA? You do have to apply for FAFSA every year. So I'm assuming that's what you're asking. But once you apply for it for that academic year, that school year, you can't reapply for that same year. So if you have to make any corrections to your application, go back into it and change anything that may have been inputted incorrectly, you can go back into it and make those corrections, but you can't reapply for that same year, but you do have to apply every single year.
Right, so you do the application every year. And as Quinte mentioned, if you had some corrections, you just go back into the one you did and make corrections. But what was the other part of the question, the second part? I'm trying to remember. Oh, about can you apply before, right? So each FAFSA application is for a specific year. So like the application that's open now, which would be too early for you guys, is for those who are getting awarded for this fall, but you're in high school, you can't get financial aid, you're in high school. Next spring, you're still in high school, and then next summer, well, you could start school next summer. So if you did the FAFSA that's open now, you could take summer classes next summer. So each application has a specific fall, spring, and summer window. So even though you do one now, let's say you do a FAFSA now, and you're not going to go to summer school next summer right after high school graduation, then it's for nothing, because you're going to have to do the new application October 1st for fall of 2022, spring of 2023, and summer of 2023.
Perfect, thank y'all. We have a question from Nathaniel. He is asking, would financial aid be affected if the student has only one guardian/parent who is supporting them when they attend college?
Now, I wouldn't say affected like in a bad or negative way. That parent's information as far as income, now that will be used to determine the types of financial aid, the type of aid that you're eligible to receive. So if you're only being supported by one parent, or if you live with one parent, that parent that's actually supporting you would just have to complete the FAFSA, of course, input their information. If they worked in the year that's been requested, that income information is what's going to be used to determine what types of aid that you're eligible to receive.
Perfect. Next question is, can you apply if you graduate in 2022? And do you know of any grants that allows you to apply for high school graduates of the 2022 year? I can't find any.
Okay, so right now, seniors, those of you who are rising seniors, you're going to apply for financial aid this October 1st for next fall, which is fall of 2022, your freshman year in the spring and summer. So you will apply this October, and the EFC there is going to be sent to your colleges. That EFC number is going to pre-qualify you for federal and some state aid. So you're not applying to individual grants. Those are being calculated and you're pre-qualifying through your EFC at the college level. They're going to award you. There are other types of grants like institutional grants. That's why at Rice we have additional monies that are not federal or state. We have private monies, and that's why we also use the CSS profile. So some of our students are doing the FAFSA and the CSS profile, and then some students are just doing the CSS profile just for the university grants. So when you do the FAFSA, you're applying for all the federal and state grants for the schools that you're applying to.
Thank you so much. Next question is there a limit to the amount of universities and colleges you can put on grants to send to?
Great question. I believe you can add up to 10 schools, I believe, that you can add up to 10 schools on your application. So if you're undecided about where you want to go, but you have a few schools that you're looking at, you can actually put up to 10 on the application.
Thank you so much. So if you're looking at multiple schools and check them all on your FAFSA, then each of those schools will essentially show you a financial aid package that you can choose from if accepted, correct?
So when you submit a FAFSA, TASFA, and or CSS profile, whatever the requirements are for that school, once you're admitted, you have to be admitted first before you can get a financial aid package. So you get admitted first, and you can submit your FAFSA before you're admitted. You can work on them at the same time. So you're going to get admitted, and then once you get admitted, then you're going to get a financial aid package. And so for those of you applying for regular decision, you can kind of weigh your options. Hey, also make your final decision.
Thank you so much. So I'll go ahead and answer, or I'll go ahead and ask these next two questions since they both pertain to scholarships. What would be considered a good GPA to apply for all those applications? And I'm gonna think that's more of the scholarship question. And then another question is, for 2022, would the test scores will be considered to award the scholarships and aid? Also, we do have 2 minutes left.
Okay, I'm gonna try to be quick. Great question. As far as the test scores, yes, it is usually considered. Due to COVID, I know some institutions may be either waiving those test scores or doing things a little different. I know at TSU, we are waiving the test scores. So just check with your institution just to see how they are handling that. Like I said, due to COVID, there were a few changes with some institutions. What would be considered a good GPA? Certain scholarships require at least a 3.0. I think the lowest at TSU, the lowest that we have is a 2.5. So just check with your institution. They should have a list of scholarships and the criteria that you have to meet in order to receive that scholarship.
Okay, so this will be the last question. Now, before I ask this question, I want to encourage everybody who's still here that hasn't, again, please take down both presenters' information as they will be a good resource for you if your question hasn't been answered or if you have questions in the future about anything else. And we've been going in order, but I'm going to randomly select one of these at this point. Let's see that one. Okay, I'll choose this one. It says, maybe I'm getting confused on TASFA. Can U.S. citizens apply if they don't qualify income-wise for the FAFSA?
The answer is no. FAFSA is only for undocumented students in Texas applying to Texas public schools who have lived in Texas for a certain period of time graduating from a Texas high school. So everybody else will have to do the FAFSA or CSS profile or a combination of those two.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that question. And thank y'all for answering all of these questions. We have answered just about 50 questions. So kudos to y'all. Really, really appreciate that. I've learned a lot from this as well. So, and I know that the students and parents that were here definitely learned a lot. Thank you all for attending this. And I encourage y'all to not forget to sign up for the Polishing Your Application session, which will be on July 1st from 6 to 7 p.m. And I know that we can't hear or see you, but we can feel the good vibes. Everybody give our presenters a big round of applause. And I hope that all of y'all have a really, really great rest of your Tuesday evening. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.